Thank you, Jared and Gary, and welcome to the Midweek Tackle. My name's Lauren Wood. I'm joined by Corbin Middlemas and John Ralph. Now, boys, let's get stuck straight in. Let's start, of course, with Tasmania. Now, the Tasmanian Planning Commission has handed down its report today, John, of course, hinging on that stadium. The report has surmised that it is officially too big, less benefits than was anticipated, and it could plunge Tasmania into $1.8 billion of debt. So that is essentially the summary of this report. They are not bound by this. It, of course, has to get to Parliament, which we will get to shortly, John. But it is a major step in this process. What actually is the fallout?
Talk about a bunch of killjoys, Corbin, I tell you what. So I spoke to Kevin Foley today, the former South Australian Treasurer who greenlit Adelaide Oval. Now, every single person apart from him and Andrew Demetrio felt that Adelaide Oval would be a catastrophic mistake. They were all wrong. His strong message for Tasmania and the Rockcliffe government today is this. This is your one chance to build a field of Tasmanian dreams. This is his quote to Fox Footy. I would be damned if any government I was in would allow an unelected, appointed entity to stray out of its lane. Its lane is to tick the boxes, not lecture governments. How in the hell does a planning body have the ability to talk about financial and economic matters? We never predicted the explosion of activity at Adelaide because of this stadium, Adelaide Oval. That can happen in Hobart. It will no longer be the laughing stock of the nation. It will be the centre of attraction. So that's the emotion, that's the politics. How does it happen? How does this get greenlit? Because it needs to get through the lower house and then the upper house.
I spoke to my ABC colleague Chris Rowbottom about this today, and he posed a very simple question here was, is the info in the report bad enough to flip those that have already committed their support? So let's just say, for argument's sake, that where people are positioned at the moment is where they stay. And when I say people, I mainly mean the two major parties here, obviously, in the Liberal Party and the Labor Party. If everybody holds their current position, it will get through the lower house. Then we go to the upper house, and basically it'll be 15 individuals that will decide it. So as it sits at the moment, we basically know how 12 of them are going to vote, unless, again, information changes based off this report. But for the sake of the argument, let's say it doesn't for the time being. Then it comes down to potentially 3. And very potentially it comes down to just 1. And the one MP that we're looking at here in part of this is a woman by the name of Beck Thomas. She's an independent for the northern suburbs of Hobart. And there is, and it was put to me today, there is zero hyperbole in this, that the fate of this stadium could very well rest on one upper house MP, and that's what it could come down to as to how she votes or not. Now, the word around this today was very much they are going to wait to see what the government puts forward. So as much as this is just the planning committee with their recommendation, the government still has to present it to Parliament. So what does Rockcliffe's government take from the planning commission report? What does he toss out completely? And what is he to present to the government? And that ultimately is what the MPs are going to vote on, not the planning commission report that was presented today.
So Beck Thomas, of course, the member for Elwick, former Glenorchy mayor, no less. So she is born and bred Tasmanian. It could all fall to her hand, which is just quite incredible, Corbin. Now, John, I listened to all of this and my immediate thought goes to delays. We know things have been pushed back in a timeline sense for Tasmania. I know their AFLW outfit was hoping for 2027. It's looking at least 28 on that front as well. I mean, if you're the AFL, you sit back and look at this, and I would imagine it is another hurdle potentially in the way. What do they think about this?
Of course, privately they are worried, but they're very much publicly holding the line. They said as much in a statement today. Andrew Dillon's legacy will not be walking away from the new stadium or a 19th licence in Tasmania. Now, potentially there is a trigger clause, a $4.5 million fine if a portion of this stadium is not built by 2027. If we're talking about $4 million in a competition that generates hundreds of millions, in a stadium that's likely to be, I don't know, $1.5 million, that's not going to be the breaking point. And he's had a tough year. He's not turning an entire state against him. You've been to Adelaide Oval when it's been fully booked. It's extraordinary. We've been to every iteration of a gather round. It's amazing. So Adelaide Oval generates the economic activity in the CBD. That generates the activity that allows them to pay for live, allows them to pay for gather round. Gather round allows the best retail politician in Australia, in Peter Malinaskis, to tell a story of their wineries, of their fine food, of everything that makes South Australia tick and makes its constituents proud. That's what happens when you get something like an amazing stadium like this. The only guarantee that they won't be able to get Dua Lipa or Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift there is if they try to play football in Bellarive. It's not going to happen. Yes, it's costly, but by creating this stadium, you generate economic activity, which you can put into building, hiring nurses, hiring policemen, building all of the infrastructure you need, you can have the best of both worlds.
It is incredible. As you say, you spoke to Kevin Foley today, and it really does feel like, doesn't it, that Adelaide, it is the ultimate case study for them. I mean, we've seen the brochure that the Tasmanian Devils are giving to prospective draftees. Even all the things you just rattled off about Adelaide with golf and wine and food and Salamanca Market and all of those things, of course, art and everything that goes with it. I mean, you can line that almost up with South Australia as well. Beautiful scenery. So it is the perfect case study for them. You would imagine there's a lot of sitting back and heavy reading of that report happening tonight. Now, of course, Zach Merrett, this story continues to gather steam. John, what actually is the latest? Because as we sit here now, we are, 5 sleeps out from football's biggest night.
That's right. So the AFL has confirmed that Zach Merrett will be at the Brownlow medal. We know that many people around him and at Essendon have spoken for him. So he's been invited, and the only way that he can actually dodge that is to ask for a special dispensation, an exemption for special circumstances. He has not done that. The expectation is that he will turn up and he will be there as the Essendon captain on a table with some of his Essendon teammates. I suppose my point is that he needs to have not an escape strategy, but a strategy leading into this one. Make sure you've spoken first. Make sure you hold your head high. Don't get dragged down by all the leaks and all the drama, even though you've probably been guilty of some of that at your camp. The awkwardness of him sitting there with his teammates, Corbin, it's going to be exquisite there. So I would hope that he speaks before that. And he's probably going to have to walk the red carpet, not be asked once, but be asked 20 times. What are you doing now, Zach?
Well, this is going to be the interesting thing, isn't it, Corbin? Because the way that the Brownlow red carpet is set up is, of course, there is a large area at the front where all of the waiting media is, of course, broadcast cameras, print journalists, bloggers these days, and TikTok creators as well. So essentially that area is open for players and their partners to walk through. Now, in my previous years of covering the red carpet, there is a secret door. So there'll often be players that you're hoping to grab who are potentially playing in the grand final. You know, we all would love to get a story from a skipper or two. There is another door that they can actually move into the main atrium of Crown Casino, skip that sort of waiting media area, still get the red carpet experience, all of the magnificent photos that go with it. But of course, managed to bypass the media, but that would almost become a bigger story, wouldn't it?
It would. I'd be surprised if we don't hear from him in some way, shape or form before it gets to that. And if you speak to people close to Essendon, they feel like, every party involved in this is mature enough to make this work. So as much as we look at it from the outside and think this is going to be incredibly awkward and there's a lot for them to work through, I think the feeling is amongst the Bombers that, look, he's the captain of the footy club. He's got 2 years to run. He's been, close with these guys for a period of time. He can sit on the table with them for one night, even with all this playing out in the background. And the other thing is that the Bombers still very much feel like, look, we hold the whip hand here. He's an Essendon player. He's contracted for 2 years. So if we don't get a deal that not only is the value of Zach Merrett, but the value to what we deem him to be worth. So that might be a higher bar than perhaps how the football world sees it. If Essendon go, look, he's our captain. We've come out publicly and said, look, we're not trading him under any circumstances. So unless we get something that satisfies us, he's going to walk back in, and all of a sudden he's there, come day one of the pre-season, and he's going to play for Essendon for 2 more years.
I know that's what he has to say, and I've thought previously maybe he could be there for 1 more year before they trade him in a better draft hand. I just think that he walks back in and he says, they're all the AFLW people who felt like I was moving them over to kick goals. They're all the officials. How many of those people have leaked against me? They're all my teammates who, at the first possible chance, even though some of them have wanted to jump ship before, they're all publicly, which I've never seen happen before in 25 years of journalism. So, look, I have thought before, maybe he can hold the line and they'll all be mature and they'll all go back into a room. I just wonder whether it's just gone so far past that, Corbin.
But my worry about all this, and we're sort of looking from the outside in some of the reporting of it, where why would it be in Essendon's best interest to leak some of this stuff? Because then Zach looks like a distressed asset. They're actually trying to make the value of their asset higher. So they should be telling anyone that'll want to listen, we love Zach. Zach's great. He's friends with all our players. We don't have an issue welcoming him back to the footy club. Whereas if they try and besmirch him in any kind of way, or that's actually going to lower his stocks and going to give the view to the footy world that we got this piece that we can't possibly have back in the footy club.
Yeah, but maybe it's because they're trying to protect their own asses. And so a lot of those players came out when there was criticism of, have we got a great relationship with our coach? And so it was told to me that those players went straight to Craig Vozzo, that it wasn't that Brad Scott said, hey, can you defend me here? But, so a lot of people have absolutely tried to cover their own bums. And as a result of it, I totally agree, he's become a distressed asset. Look, The issue here is that not that he might leave, but what happens if he leaves and in 12 months' time everyone else wants to leave as well? We'll just show you a champion data graphic here. This is the top 100 players and how many clubs have a certain number of players in them. So as you can see there, only 3. So that's Merrett, Mason Redmond, Sam Durham, none of them in the top 40. So just a huge lack of A-graders. So Ben Hobbs is the number 13 draft pick. His manager is looking around right now because they haven't been able to assure him of a contract. Maybe he'd get 1 year. We know that Archie Perkins is a first rounder who's struggling. Nick Cox has got his concussion battles. Desperately short on A-graders. So you're in that doom loop. You trade out Zach Merrett. Well, you're absolutely scuppered. You lose him, you haven't got enough talent on the list, and more people move on. It's a pretty worrying number there, and I thought 3 was pretty generous too.
Yeah, it is a compelling few weeks and months ahead for Essendon. Of course, as you say, the Brownlow medal Monday night. I think there's another promotional event alongside some former captains, whether he appears there, and of course the Crichton medal, the Essendon Best and Fairest on October 2, where it's expected he'll win. When was the last time we had a Best and Fairest winner who wasn't even there? So incredibly compelling few weeks ahead for Zach Merrett. But what a compelling few days the AFL have got ahead, John. I mean, I know we're guilty of hyperbole at this time of year. It's finals, everyone's excited, and all of the language and stakes get bigger. But this is arguably the most formative 9 days that the AFL has had in a very long time.
It's the 9-day dash. It will shape the presidential leadership of the commission boss. It will shape the rules for Tasmania. It will shape the rules for father-sons like Cody Walker next year. Let's run through it quickly. So the AFL commissioners are expected to meet with the 3 candidates on Friday. They are Peter Allen, Peter Gordon, Craig Drummond. All of them potentially could succeed Richard Goyder. On Sunday, the Commission meets those club presidents, potentially says one of those people we've discussed on Friday is our new Commission boss, if you'll have them. On Monday, we've got no idea what the AFL presidents will say. On Monday, they're set to have their own private chat. There's talk about a private vote. If it is that they don't like any of those, could they still elevate Jeff Brown or elevate him for consideration? The Commission on Monday decides the Tassie list allowances, how many picks, how much of a bonus a system they have for sign-ons, the father-son rules for coming years, insufficient intent, the sub-rule. Now, Merrett and Bailey Smith have their Brownlow dramas on Monday. I don't think Bailey's partner is set to attend. That'd be a big circus with 20 million Insta followers. And then Friday, the AFL Grand Final Parade. Now, the AFL is aware there is a security overlay. If you've been anywhere near the Melbourne CBD in the last couple of months, there is a protest every second day, whether it's Israel versus Palestine or anti-corruption or anti-government. So they'll beef up that security. They believe that because it's such a feel-good event, it's on a public holiday, they don't believe it will be impacted, and it's mostly outside the edge of the CBD. And then Saturday, we get Snoop Dogg. Booed, cheered, jeered. What's going to happen? Is he going to do a press conference where he says something stupid? You know, the journos will bait him into that, Corbin. It's a big week, and I just don't know how it ends with Snoopaloop.
Yeah, I'm fascinated too as to what they do in the lead-up with him, as to whether they put him up for press or how they're possibly going to play that off. Because you'd want some promotion beforehand, but at the same time, as you said, we know if he's there to answer questions, they want to have done a pretty good job to try and give him some kind of an answer or some line ready to spit out. And
you tell him what you can't say, you know what he's going to say, exactly that line as well. So it's Pandora's box with Snoop. Yeah,
compelling first meeting, as we told you, on the midweek tackle last night between the AFL and Snoop's team today. So we'll keep you updated, of course, on all of that. Now, Corbin, all roads lead to next Saturday. There are a few key calls, though, to come from the AFL next week. Take us through what they've got to weigh up.
This is all the important stuff, Loz. Yep. So this is things like what jumper is my team going to wear in the grand final? What change room will they use? And why is the other team mentioned first on the premiership poster and my team's mentioned second? So if you are a supporter of one of these 4 clubs, this is how it's going to pan out. So basically the preference for the change rooms is given to the highest ranked club. So that's Geelong as it stands at the moment. If they win through, they'll get to choose change room 1 or change room 2. Change room 1's got the big wide race at the MCG, and change room 2 has the skinny race. That includes Collingwood, who Eddie Maguire struck a deal years ago for Collingwood to always use the main change rooms. Doesn't extend to the final series, so don't worry about that there. When it comes to the jumpers, I'm told this is all about trying to avoid a clash. So that means even if the shorts change, and I was told by somebody at the AFL that the general feedback inquiries on the AFL website, the common thread is why do the Cats always have to wear white shorts? And that is because their jumpers mainly white, and so as a result they me, whatever provides the best contrast. Light versus dark is what we're going for on that front. And then the last one is the grand final billing, as I said. So why is one team mentioned first, the other team mentioned second? That is purely due to ladder position. So given Geelong are the highest ranked team remaining, Hawthorn are the lowest ranked team. If Geelong win on Friday night, it'll be Geelong versus either Collingwood or Brisbane. If they lose, Hawthorn, because they're eighth, will be mentioned second. So it'll be Collingwood or Brisbane versus the Hawks.
So as the highest ranked team, does Chris Scott get to choose who's in his press conference, journalism style?
I don't have any comment on that.
No, but he will, because he is speaking for the first time tomorrow, Chris Scott. So we'll, of course, be all over that for Code Sports. Now, just very quickly before we do move on, because two massive games ahead of that grand final week decided. My stats man tells me tonight to look back in the annals of history. 1925, of course, 100 years ago, Collingwood versus Geelong. So read into that what you will of what this could hold a century later. Of course, the big games are all in action on Fox Footy this weekend. But Brisbane, of course, they have been here and done this before, Corbin, for the last 2 years running. This is their third throw at the stumps, of course, successful last year. It went perfectly for them, the travel program. Are they going to follow their sort of typical routine this weekend?
They're going to follow their big game routine. So something they did for last year's grand final, they also did it round 15 down in Geelong, where they came an extra night early. So they'll spend multiple nights in Melbourne before the game. Interestingly, they haven't always done it. So even though they had success against the Cats in round 15, it wasn't replicated later in the year. The only time they would travel with multiple days' sleep away from home would be for Perth, in Perth for logistical reasons, but they're going to do it again here. So the team is actually going to travel on Thursday. They will have a captain's run at Marvel Stadium on Friday, which is open to the public, so people can go along and watch the Brisbane Lions train there. And then obviously they'll play on Saturday. Some of their coaches are going to attend the Friday night preliminary final, but they'll be here multiple nights before they step onto the field come Saturday. And while I'm on the topic of jumpers and all these types of things, they're going to wear the maroon instead of the Fitzroy red. So expect to see Brisbane in maroon come Saturday.
You are a details man. That's why we love you here, Corbin. Now, it's not the only decider that looms, John. Of course, the VFL grand final is this weekend. Of course, Footscray versus Southport. Now, a favourite of the AFL, really, Hawthorn and the Western Bulldogs, Taylor Duryea. I tell you what, I don't know what he's done for a slice of luck. He almost needs to go and buy a Tats Lotto ticket, doesn't he? Because he's right in contention to be a big impact on the weekend.
So basically he needed a footy miracle, and that's what he got. So here's his suspension of a couple of weeks back, a 4-week ban against Bailey Lambert. I spoke to him today. So he missed the round 24 AFL side against the Dockers. His AFL career is over. 4-week ban a week later, career done. He was told by the club they would not contest the ban. They were just so unlikely. Look at it. We all think that that's likely a 4-week ban. He cried for 10 minutes in front of his locker. My career's over. I don't get a chance for a farewell contest. So then he said, I need to speak to Adrian Anderson, who's our AFL delegate. I need him to tell me firsthand. Adrian says, well, you're telling me there's a chance. So they take it to the tribunal. They get it from intentional down to careless. They get the grading of it down as well. And then he goes, this is amazing, but I still need my side to win a preliminary final against Box Hill. So he goes to the game. He's not allowed to sit in the box because he's a suspended player. His best mate in Luke Bruce, who he played under 12s New South Wales with, is playing in that Box Hill side. Luke does his knee. He goes down into the rooms, the likes of Sam Mitchell and David Hale and co are there. Here is that injury there. And so he's aware, as his team eventually wins this preliminary final, I'll get the chance in the grand final to say goodbye in my own way. And my great mate Luke is not allowed to do that because his career is over. So he's going to have about 70 family and friends at that Icon Park game. 2 flags, 219 AFL games, a great career. And as he says, yeah, I want to win, but I get to go out my own way. It throws up incredible stories, football. And he's been a great journeyman and better than a journeyman, a really good serviceable AFL player.
No doubt. Just on Luke Bruce, by the way, I spoke to someone at Hawthorn today. They said surgery went well, so thoughts with Luke. All the best to him, absolutely, on his recovery from that MCL and the ACL. Absolutely,
and potentially the landing zone could be Adamuse and could be Richmond as well. And as Doc there said, well, if you're going to do an ACL, you might as well go to an AFL club as an assistant or a development coach. At least they're good facilities for rehab.
That's right. Narrow favourites, of course, over Southport is Footscray on Sunday for that Icon Park face-off. Now, John, we've got 4 teams firmly in contention, but with that comes 14 teams that aren't, that probably have an eye on what next year could potentially hold for them. Now, we hear a lot about the draft, but there's a little bit of a late bolter. Tell us about him.
So the November draft desperately needs a player like Sullivan Roby. So who the hell is Sullivan Roby? He's played 8 games of Coates League football. He's 192 centimetres. Here he is, a big-bodied player who will play in the grand final this week for the Eastern Rangers. He plays like Cripps and Bontempelli, being compared to Clayton Oliver, who roared into the top 5 of an AFL draft, very lightly raced. So his mum, Brooke, has battled bowel cancer in the last year. Both he and his dad took time off work and for study to try and help her out. She is in remission. A great story, a great motivation. There are so many academy and father-son picks. So clubs like Richmond or Essendon, who have got multiple early draft picks, will be thinking, maybe he's that bloke. Maybe he's that next Bontempelli there. Look, I know you follow your college football. We need to tell our stories better. Now, I know that college football gets 3 years and they get extraordinary television coverage. We need to know the top 30 players and have seen them before. So I still think we can find a way to market the AFL draft a bit better.
Absolutely. It's a great human interest story, isn't it, on top of the fact that his football skills and what he's able to do there. And number 55, he's carrying around a big, heavy number and yet broad shoulders, doing it well.
Oh, I can't wait to see his mum and dad on draft night, should Sullivan Roby's moment come. Now, we'll be back with plenty more on the other side of this break here at the Midweek Tackle, including a look at the latest Mr. September. Of course, it's the boy from Poowong, Jai Newcombe for the Hawks. He's a star. Who are the other players from years gone by that lift at this time of year? We'll have a look at the big names very soon. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back to the Midweek Tackle. Of course, it is this time of year that we celebrate magnificent footy in action this weekend, led by none other than Jai Newcombe at the Hawks. Corbin, you have crunched the numbers here to look at the Mr. Septembers, and I guess where he sits among the game's best, because he's been absolutely flying, this bloke.
Incredible. So we learned, obviously, during the week, he's played 4 finals now. He's been the number 1 rated player on the ground in all of them. My man Corey from Champion Data and I were hard at work today working out, OK, so what does all this mean, game ratings and everything else, in relation to the rest of the field? So these are other guys that are active in the final series, fellow big game performers. And look at that difference. So plus 8.1, that is a player rating that goes up in the final series for Jai Newcombe compared to what he does in the home and away season. And by the way, he's a pretty good player in the home and away season for that matter. Will Ashcroft, Nick Watson, Jordan De Goey, other guys that have huge spikes. Bobby Hill. Interesting conversation piece, of course, whether the Pies name him tomorrow night or not. So that is how he looks compared to some guys that are still alive in this year's final series. And we thought, well, if we tweak the numbers and look at it historically, what about some of the great finals performers, really since these stats were kept from about 2010 onwards?
Some handy names there.
How about the first name on the list? Clay Smith, of course, part of that magic carpet ride with the Western Bulldogs back in 2016, and what a memorable run that was. And apart from that, it's Jai Newcombe. That's the name that jumps out number 2 on that list. And then a couple of other names. Mark Murphy's actually number 3. So for a 300 gamer, only played in 6 finals, but gee, they were good finals performances. And then, as you'd come to expect, Dustin Martin and Adam Goods, who have the premierships and the big game accolades to speak for it.
So if Tomo doesn't get you Lily Mast, so the 3 taggers at Geelong, so can Jai Newcombe burn through all 3 of those taggers? I don't know if it's Tom Atkins early on, and if it's not him, it becomes a Sheen Mullen. And if it's not him, it becomes Mark O'Connor. They're going to throw everything at him. I would imagine that the only thing right now in Chris Scott's head, apart from the post-match press conference, is don't get beaten by Jai Newcombe. So it's going to be fascinating to think that he's had a full 7 or 8 days to strategise about it. What's his plan B? What's his plan C? And as we know, they try to throw Sam Berry at Jai Newcombe. And then they try to, at times, throw Jordan Dawson. Nothing worked. Yeah. 7-zip in those first 7 Senate bounces. Yeah, it's basically Jai Newcombe versus Geelong. I love it.
He's not going to sneak up on anyone, is he now, Jai Newcombe? Everyone knows what he can do in the spring, and I'm sure we'll see that on Friday night.
On the AFLW front, round 6 this weekend. Now, a little bit of a quirky one ahead of grand final weekend for you guys. I can tell you tonight that clubs have raised the prospect of a floating fixture for men's grand final weekend. So this is something that's been run up the flagpole with the fixturing department by at least one club as we stand. The round 7 fixture next weekend should be a little bit of a floater to allow the 2 competing teams in the men's grand finals, women's outfit, to maybe get their game out of the way on Thursday or Friday once we know who the teams are. Then, of course, embrace this one club mentality, get around their men's team, of course, the celebrations that follow. So Brisbane, of course, have borne the brunt of this over recent years, given they've been in the last 2 grand finals. Last year and this year, should they make it, their women's team will play at Springfield on the Sunday afternoon of men's grand final weekend. So, of course, the girls watch the match on the TV. then of course they're not there for any of the celebrations or any of the scenes that follow. So the men's team then of course come back to Springfield with the trophy, the big homecoming event that ends up needing to be ticketed and limited to about 6,000 people because effectively it's a match day. So it's just one to keep a close watch on. The AFL has been open to sort of more flexible fixturing arrangements this year when it comes to timings, but I think I spoke to a number of clubs today and it seems like they'd be something that they'd be supportive of in the coming years. So one to watch.
I think it makes sense. There's probably about only 4 AFL clubs that tend to win the premiership, and there's probably about 4 AFLW clubs that are any good. So maybe you should schedule them next Thursday or next year on a Thursday as well. You've got a fascinating story about Matty Buck, which I'm intrigued about. Just tell us a bit more about that one.
Well, that's coming in tomorrow's newspaper and, of course, on Code Sports. Now, effectively a double life for the Carlton AFLW coach. He's got his team absolutely flying, but I tell you what, he's busy at home. He's got 3 young boys with his wife, Rachel. Now, they are foster carers. They have cared for more than 150 at-risk children, often on very late notice. The way that Rachel puts it, the phone can ring at midnight. You could have a baby at 2 o'clock in the morning and you don't know how long for. So, as I say, that is in tomorrow's newspapers. One of the more heartwarming stories, I must admit, that I've ever done. So quite incredible how they're juggling it all. I have no idea how they're managing that.
And Matty doing a pretty good fish too of pushing Carlton all the way up the ladder in a competition that has got some inequities as well.
He certainly is third on the ladder. They are flying, as are both of you. Magnificent to have you with us on the Midweek Tackle. We'll be across all of the news at codesports.com.au. Enjoy the footy.